It was the silence that hit me first. A quiet so deep it felt like the house was holding its breath. In the late summer of 1996, I was 19, my head still spinning from a house party the night before. My first real dance with alcohol leaving me raw and unsteady. I pushed open the front door of our Portland home, expecting the usual hum of life. My sister's chatter, the clink of dishes, or my mom's soft humming. Instead, there was nothing. The air felt heavy, like it was waiting for something to break. I stepped inside, my sneakers squeaking on the hardwood, and called out, "Mom, Sarah?" No answer. My stomach twisted, a cold knot forming as I moved toward the kitchen. There she was, my mother sitting at the table, her hands wrapped around a glass of red wine. The sight made my heart lurch. Mom never drank in the daytime. Her face was pale, her eyes fixed on some distant point, as if she were staring through the walls into another world. I froze, the hangover pulsing in my temples, and for a moment, I thought she hadn't seen me. Then her gaze flicked up, and the sorrow in her eyes pinned me to the spot. "Sit down," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, and I obeyed, dread curling in my chest like smoke. "Your father's gone," she said, the words falling like stones into a still pond. "He's not coming back." I blinked, my mind scrambling to catch up. "Gone? Like dead?" I asked, my voice cracking. She shook her head, her lips trembling. "No, he just left." Relief washed over me for a fleeting second, a fragile bubble that burst as the weight of her words sank in. Left? My dad, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who laughed too loud at his own bad jokes, who always smelled faintly of sawdust and coffee. He was gone. I fired questions at her. Where? When? Why? But each one seemed to wound her deeper. She didn't know. He'd packed a suitcase, taken his car, and vanished without a note, without a word. By the end, she was sobbing, and I was holding her, promising everything would be okay, even as my own heart screamed that it wouldn't. The days that followed were a blur of silence and shadows. My sister, Sarah, barely spoke, her eyes red from crying. Mom moved through the house like a ghost, her laughter replaced by a hollow quiet. I kept waiting for Dad to walk through the door, to say it was all a mistake, but the door stayed shut. At night, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment I could remember with him. Had I missed something? A sign? A crack? In his smile? The questions gnawed at me, but Mom's refusal to talk about him only deepened the mystery. When I pressed her, her grief turned to rage. "Don't you dare mention that man," she'd scream, her voice raw. "He's dead to me." Her anger was a wall, and behind it, I sensed a secret she was guarding with her life. I couldn't let it go. The pain of his absence was a fire in my chest, but it was the not knowing that burned hottest. Why had he left us? Where had he gone? And why was Mom so determined to bury him in silence? I started digging, searching for answers in the fragments he'd left behind. A photo, a phone number, anything. I found an old address book in his desk, the leather cover worn soft from years of use. Inside, I recognized one name, Carl, Dad's college friend, the only person he'd ever called a brother. If anyone knew where Dad was, it would be him. I dialed the number with shaking hands, my heart pounding as the line rang. "Answer, Carl. Please." When he picked up, his voice was warm but guarded, and when I told him Dad was gone, the silence on the other end felt like a confession. Carl's voice was a lifeline, but his words pulled me into a deeper abyss. He hadn't heard from Dad in months, he said, but the shock in his tone told me he wasn't surprised. "Your dad, he's always been a wanderer at heart," Carl said, his words heavy with something unspoken. He mentioned a place Dad used to talk about, a speck on the map called Wrigley, up in the wilds of northern Canada. He spent a summer there in college, Carl said. Loved it. Said it was the kind of place a man could lose himself or find himself. My pulse quickened. Was that where Dad had gone, to chase some ghost from his past? I checked Portland first. Dad's co-workers hadn't seen him. His desk at the lumberyard was cleared out. Lincoln City, his hometown, was another dead end. No trace of him at the old bars or the beach he used to walk. Wrigley was my last hope, but it wasn't just a road trip. It was a 30-hour drive through the Canadian wilderness, a place so remote it felt like the edge of the world. I packed my car with supplies, my mind racing with questions. What had drawn Dad back to Wrigley? Was it a midlife crisis like Carl suggested, or something darker? The road stretched out before me, endless and unforgiving, and with every mile I felt myself slipping into a dreamlike state, as if I were chasing a shadow that might not even exist. Wrigley was smaller than I'd imagined, a cluster of buildings, huddled against the vast, untamed wilderness. Population, barely 100, mostly First Nation folks who eyed my beat-up sedan with quiet curiosity. The air was crisp, scented with pine and something older, like the earth itself was whispering secrets. I pulled into the town's only gas station, the pump creaking as I filled my tank. Winston, the attendant, was a wiry man in his 40s, his face weathered but kind. We chatted about the weather, the isolation, how outsiders were rare here. "You're looking for someone, aren't you?" he said, his eyes narrowing. It wasn't a question. I pulled out a photo of Dad, the most recent I had, his smile frozen in time. Winston studied it, then shook his head. Haven't seen him. I wasn't ready to give up. I dug through my bag and found another photo, one I'd found tucked in Dad's old jacket. It showed a younger version of him, college-aged, standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. They were in hiking gear, grinning beside a massive rock veined with strange minerals. Winston's eyes widened. "That's Hunter's Rock," he said, his voice low. 10 miles out, famous around here. He told me the story. Geologists in the 80s came to study it, thinking it was a meteorite or some ancient relic. Locals called it the spear of a giant hunter, a myth that stirred both awe and fear. The rock stretched deep into the earth, maybe a mile, defying explanation. Winston glanced at the woman in the photo, his expression shifting. "Mind if I make a call?" he asked, taking the picture to the back. My heart pounded. What had he seen? Winston's call changed everything. He returned, his face grim, and told me the woman in the photo looked like Susan Culver, a King's University student, who vanished near Great Bear Lake in 1973. I was a kid then, he said, but her face was on every missing poster. My mind reeled. Susan Culver? Who was she to Dad? And why was he with her at Hunter's Rock? Winston suggested I visit the local government office housed in the town's medical clinic to confirm. It was closed for the night, so I thanked him and wandered Wrigley's quiet streets, the weight of the mystery pressing down on me. The town felt alive in a strange way, as if the trees and shadows were watching, waiting for me to uncover something I wasn't ready for. The next morning, I grabbed coffee at the gas station. Winston's small talk, a brief reprieve from the unease gnawing at me. At the clinic, I met Chief Irwin, a warm, weathered man whose title as chief of the Bzaki First Nation felt more ceremonial than commanding. He welcomed me like a rare guest, offering to show me the tribal lands. But when I showed him the photo of Dad and Susan, his smile vanished. "We need to talk in my office," he said, his voice cold as the wind outside. My pulse raced. This was it. The truth I'd driven 500 miles for. In his cramped office, Chief Irwin laid out the story like a man unburdening a curse. Susan Culver was a hiker, a bright young woman who disappeared in the Sawu lands near Great Bear Lake. Dad had been with her camping in the marshes when she vanished. The RCMP arrested him, questioned him twice, suspecting he'd harmed her. I sat there, numb, as the words sank in. My dad, a murder suspect? It didn't fit the man I knew, but the doubt crept in like poison. Irwin studied Dad's recent photos, shaking his head. Haven't seen him here, he said, but added, if he's looking for Susan, he'd go straight to the lake. That's where her camp was found, empty, untouched. The image haunted me. A campsite frozen in time, Susan gone, and Dad running from something too terrible to face. The Sawu lands called to me, a siren song of answers and dread. Getting to Great Bear Lake meant a 200-mile drive to Deline, then a 30-mile hike through mosquito-infested marshes. I didn't have a 4-4, and my bank account was as thin as my resolve. I could go home, regroup, come back later. But the thought of leaving felt like betraying Dad. Chief Irwin mentioned an RCMP office in Deline, where they'd questioned Dad all those years ago. Records, reports, maybe even answers. I had to go. I called my boss first, spilling the truth. Dad was gone, and I was chasing him across Canada to bring him home. Take all the time you need, he said, his kindness a small anchor in the storm. Mom was harder. When I told her where I was, her voice cracked with fury. Come home now, she screamed, refusing to send money. I argued, pleaded, my voice echoing in Winston's gas station office. After a tearful half hour, she relented, wiring just enough to keep me going. Winston, who'd overheard it all, offered to drive me to Deline for gas money. I'm invested now, he said, his eyes kind but serious. Then he asked a question that stopped me cold. If your dad's looking for that girl, and you're looking for him, who's looking for you? The words sank into me, a chill that lingered long after we hit the road. The drive to Deline was a blur of pine forests and empty highways, Winston's warnings echoing in my mind. He talked me out of hiking the marshes. Without gear, I'd be lost in days. Instead, I'd check with the RCMP, leave my contact info, and pray they'd spot Dad. But deep down, I wanted more. I wanted to know what had happened to Susan, what had broken Dad all those years ago. Deline was a small outpost, the RCMP office a squat building next to a grocery store. Winston parked, promising to grab food while I went inside. The reception was sparse, the air thick with the scent of old coffee. Constable Jacobs, a young Mountie, greeted me warmly, but when I explained my mission, he radioed for Mackenzie, an older officer with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too much. Mackenzie knew my father's name before I said it. He'd been a junior constable in 1973, part of the team that investigated Susan's disappearance. Your dad came stumbling into Deline alone, he said, his voice low. Reported her missing himself. But something in Dad's story, something he'd said in that first interview, made the Mounties suspect him. Mackenzie couldn't share the files without clearance, but his eyes told me he wanted to. I left my contact info, hoping for a miracle, and rejoined Winston for the drive back to Wrigley. That night, as I tried to sleep in my car, a knock on the window jolted me awake. It was Mackenzie, his red jacket glowing in the moonlight. He climbed into the passenger seat, pulling a cassette tape from his pocket. You didn't hear this from me, he said, his voice a growl. I fumbled with the car's tape player, my hands shaking as the tape hissed to life. It was Dad's voice, young and raw from that first interview. He called her Susie, his voice breaking as he described their night in the marshes. She'd left the tent to relieve herself, and seconds later she screamed. Dad grabbed a flashlight. ran out and saw them. "If I tell you, you'll think I'm crazy," he said, his voice trembling. He spoke of things in the dark, things that took Susan, things that shouldn't exist. "She's dead," he sobbed. "No one could survive what they did to her." The Mounties pressed him, but he grew frantic, shouting, "How don't you? No, you live here." The tape cut off and I sat there, my breath shallow, the world tilting around me. Mackenzie shook his head when I asked for the second tape. "Not worth it," he said. Dad had clammed up, refusing to speak after they arrested him. Released for lack of evidence, he'd fled to Lean. But Susan's case lingered. No body, no blood, just an empty campsite. Mackenzie mentioned a detail that haunted me. A search dog vanished during the hunt for Susan, never found. "Where did they go?" he muttered, his eyes distant. He left me there, the tape burning a hole in my pocket, my dad's voice echoing in my skull, driving south. I was a man divided. The tape had brought me closer to Dad than I'd been in years. But it also pushed him further away, into a realm of madness and mystery. His voice, so like mine, carried a fear I couldn't shake. What had he seen in those marshes? What had taken Susan? And why had he returned to Wrigley, to that cursed place after all these years? I thought of Mom, her anger, her silence. Did she know about Susan? Was that why she hated him so fiercely? The questions piled up, each one a stone in my chest, but I had no answers. It's April 2000 now, and I'm still searching. The tape is my anchor, a relic of a past I can't escape. I've learned to hike, to survive in the wild, and this summer, I'm going back to Deline. I'll walk those marshes if I have to, face whatever Dad faced. I need to know if he's out there, alive or lost to the same shadows that took Susan. This story isn't over. I'll write again when I return. If I return. Until then, the echoes of the lost call me north, and I can't turn away. The highway stretched into the void, a ribbon of asphalt swallowed by the night. I'd been driving for hours, my eyes heavy, the hum of the engine a lullaby threatening to pull me under. But something else kept me awake, a prickling on my neck, like unseen eyes watching from the darkness beyond my headlights. You ever feel that? Like the night itself is alive, waiting for you to make a mistake? I shook it off, told myself it was just exhaustion. Then I saw it, a flickering neon sign barely alive, spelling out gas in broken letters. A lifeline. I pulled off the highway, my tires crunching gravel, and rolled into the lot of a gas station that looked like it hadn't seen a customer in years. The air was thick with the scent of gasoline and something sour, like rotting fruit. The station was a relic, peeling paint, a single pump glowing under a buzzing fluorescent light. I stepped out, stretching my aching legs, and glanced around. Nothing moved. No cars, no people, just the faint chirping of crickets and the distant howl of wind across the empty fields. I grabbed the pump, my focus narrowing to the digital display ticking up dollar by dollar. "Stay under $30, I muttered, a ritual to keep my budget in check. The numbers climbed, steady and predictable, lulling me into a false sense of normalcy. But then, a chill ran through me. The crickets had stopped, the wind had died. The silence was so complete it felt like the world was holding its breath. I looked up, expecting to see the attendant's silhouette behind the kiosk's grimy window. Nothing. Just a dim glow from inside, casting shadows that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. Maybe they're on a break, I thought, but the stillness gnawed at me. I finished pumping, capped the tank, and walked toward the kiosk to pay. Each step echoed in the quiet, my boots scuffing against cracked pavement. The door was glass, streaked with dirt, reflecting my own tired face back at me. I knocked, the sound sharp and hollow. No answer. I knocked again, harder. my knuckles, stinging. Still nothing. This isn't right, I thought, my pulse quickening. I glanced at the car parked at the other pump. A dark sedan, its engine off, its driver's seat empty. Where was everyone? My mind flashed to a story a friend told. Years ago, late at night over beers. He'd sworn it was true. A tale about a gas station out on some nowhere highway. Travelers would stop, fill up, and then vanish. No trace, no explanation, just their cars left behind, tanks full, doors open. The place eats people, he'd said, his voice low, his eyes distant. I'd laughed it off then, called it campfire nonsense. But standing there, alone under that flickering light, the memory wrapped around me like a cold hand. I shook my head, trying to ground myself. Focus. Pay and get out. I pushed on the door, expecting it to be locked. It swung open easily, the hinges silent, inviting me into the gloom. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the smell of old coffee and something metallic. The counter was cluttered. Cigarette packs, a half-empty soda can, a cash register glowing. Faintly, but no attendant, no sound, not even the hum of a fridge. I called out, my voice trembling. "Hello? Anyone here?" The words hung in the air, unanswered. My heart thudded, each beat louder in the oppressive quiet. I scanned the room, my eyes darting to the corners, half expecting something to lunge from. The shadows, a rack of chips, a flickering overhead light, a door to the back marked, "Employees Only." I called again, louder, my voice cracking. "Hello? I need to pay." Nothing. Just the faint buzz of the light like a dying insect. I stepped. Behind the counter, my hands shaking. Maybe they're hurt. Maybe there's a medical emergency. The thought was flimsy, but it gave me purpose. I pushed open the back door, revealing a narrow hallway. The smell hit me first. Damp, sour, like something rotting just out of sight. A bathroom door stood ajar, empty. A storage room stacked with boxes was equally deserted. An office at the end held only a desk and a chair, papers scattered like someone had left in a hurry. I backed out, my breath shallow, the silence pressing against my eardrums. This place is a tomb, I thought, the words unbidden, chilling me to the bone. Back in the main room, I noticed something I'd missed before, the sedan's keys glinting on the counter. Whoever drove that car hadn't just stepped away, they'd left everything behind. My stomach twisted. I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling as I dialed 911. Come on, I muttered, pacing, my eyes locked on the door. The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional, but it did little to ease the dread coiling in my chest. "Sir, can you tell me what's happening?" I tried to explain, my words tripping over each other. "There's no one here. The station's empty. The attendant's gone, the other driver's gone. I checked everywhere." My voice broke as I glanced outside, the sedan's dark shape looming under the flickering light. "Have you seen any signs of a robbery?" the dispatcher asked. I laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. How would I know? But her words made me look again, searching for anything out of place. The cash register was untouched, the shelves intact. No signs of struggle, just absence. I paced, my boots loud against the linoleum, my eyes scanning the lot. That's when I saw it. The dumpster, tucked against the side of the building, its lid slightly ajar. A thought struck me, cold and sharp. What if they're hiding? I told the dispatcher I'd check, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I stepped outside, the night air biting, the silence heavier than ever. The dumpster loomed, its metal surface dented and rusted. The smell hit me before I reached it. Rotting garbage, thick and cloying, mixed with something worse, something primal. My heart pounded, each step a battle against the urge to run. I gripped the lid, My fingers slick with sweat, and lifted. "Do just a quick look," I told myself. "Then you can tell her you checked everything." The lid creaked as it rose, revealing darkness within. I leaned closer, my phone's flashlight cutting through the gloom. And there they were, 2 bodies twisted and broken, their clothes stained with dark, glistening patches. One wore a gas station uniform, its name tag glinting faintly. The other was curled into a ball, as if trying to hide from whatever had done. This. I dropped the lid, the clang echoing like a gunshot. My legs buckled and I stumbled back, my phone slipping from my hand. "They're in the dumpster," I gasped to the dispatcher, my voice raw. "They're dead. Oh God, they're dead." The world spun, my stomach heaving as I staggered toward the highway, vomiting into the dirt. The dispatcher's voice buzzed in my ear, but I barely heard her. My mind locked on the image of those bodies, their lifeless eyes staring into nothing. The police arrived in what felt like hours but was probably minutes. Their lights flashed, red and blue cutting through the darkness, but they couldn't erase what I'd seen. An officer questioned me, his voice gentle but firm. I told him everything, my words mechanical, my body numb. He said I could leave, and I did, climbing into my car with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. I drove, the highway blurring through tears I didn't realize I was shedding. I looked up the incident later, scouring the internet for answers. There were articles about a member of the public finding bodies at a gas station, but no motive, no suspects, no closure, just questions that burned in my mind. That night changed me. I don't drive at night anymore, not if I can help it. I check my fuel gauge obsessively, plan my routes to avoid remote stations, and when I pass a gas station, especially one that looks too quiet, too still, I keep going. Because I know now what the darkness can hide. I know what's waiting in the places we think are safe. I see that dumpster every time I close my eyes, its lid creaking open in my dreams, revealing not just bodies but something else, something that watches, that waits, that knows my name. The summer of my 17th year in that Arkansas town was when the world I knew began to rot. It was a place where time moved slow, where the hum of cicadas and the scent of sun-baked grass defined our days. We were a community of front porches and church suppers where a speeding ticket could fuel gossip for weeks. But that summer, something broke. I was walking home from the feed store when I heard the whispers, soft at first, then sharp, like knives cutting through the humid air. A girl, barely 14, had been found crumpled in a ditch off County Road 12. Her name was Ellie, a quiet 9th grader with a shy smile. She wasn't just hurt, she'd been torn apart. The news hit like a storm, and by evening the town was buzzing with fear, anger, and something darker. Suspicion. Ellie was alive, thank God, but barely. The hospital in Little Rock was a 3-hour drive, and they airlifted her there for surgery. I'll never forget the press conference that night, broadcast on the local news. Dr. Hargrove, a man with steady hands and a reputation for calm, stood at the podium, his face pale as ash. He said the surgery had saved her life, but his voice cracked and tears spilled down his cheeks. He cried for what had been done to her. The details were sparse but horrifying. Bruises blooming across her body, wounds so deep they'd needed hours to repair. Whoever did it hadn't just beaten her. They'd violated her in ways that made the room go quiet. My mother clutched my hand as we watched, her nails digging into my skin. "Who could do this?" she whispered. But her eyes were already searching, as if the answer was hiding among us. The town changed overnight. Porches emptied, doors locked before dusk, and parents walked their kids to school, their faces tight with worry. Ellie's memory of the attack was a fog. she couldn't describe. Her attacker, not his face, not his voice. The state police swept in, their cruisers a constant presence, while local deputies went door to door, asking questions that hung in the air like smoke. Have you seen anything strange? Anyone new in town? But no one had answers, only fear. At the diner, old men sipped coffee and muttered about strangers passing through. At church, Pastor Reynolds led prayers for Ellie's recovery, his voice steady but his eyes haunted. I saw neighbors glance at each other, their trust unraveling. In a town where everyone knew everyone, the idea of a monster among us was unthinkable. Yet, it was all we could think about. The paranoia grew like a weed, choking out reason. My friend Tommy swore he'd seen a drifter by the gas station. But when the cops checked, there was no one. Mrs. Carter, who taught Sunday school, started carrying a pistol in her purse, her hands trembling as she poured coffee at the community center. We were a town on edge, waiting for the next blow, praying the police would find the monster before he struck again. But the truth, when it came, wasn't what we expected. It didn't come from a police raid or a witness stepping forward. It came from a gunshot, sharp and final, echoing from the pastor's house on a Tuesday night. I was at home, flipping through a comic book, when the sirens wailed. They were close, too close. My mother rushed to the window, her face pale. "That's from Oak Street," she said, her voice tight. Oak Street was where Pastor Reynolds lived, a modest brick house with a neat lawn and a cross on the door. By the time we stepped outside, half the town was gathering, drawn by the flashing lights of sheriff's cruisers. Whispers spread like wildfire. The pastor shot his son. Caleb's dead. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. Caleb Reynolds was 17, a lanky kid with a quick grin and a knack for fixing cars. He was no saint, skipped school sometimes, smoked behind the bleachers, but a monster? My mind rejected the idea, even as the pieces began to fall into place. The story came in fragments, pieced together from deputies' murmurs and neighbors' hushed voices. Caleb's mother, Ellen, had called the sheriff, her screams echoing through the phone. When deputies arrived, they found Pastor Reynolds sitting on the porch, his hands stained with his son's blood, a pistol at his feet. Caleb was upstairs, sprawled across his bed, a single bullet through his skull. The pastor didn't resist. He let them cuff him, his face blank, and walked to the cruiser without a word. Ellen was hysterical, sobbing that she'd heard them, arguing. Then the shot, too fast for her to stop it. I saw her later standing in her driveway, her eyes hollow, as if the life had been drained from her. At the station, Pastor Reynolds confessed. He laid it out in a voice so calm it chilled the deputies. He and Caleb had been talking in the boys' room, a conversation that turned into a disagreement. The pastor walked downstairs, unlocked his gun safe, took out a .38 revolver, and returned to Caleb's room. He raised the gun and fired. He told them the caliber, the make of the pistol, every detail, except why. The deputies pressed him, their voices rising with frustration. What did you argue about? Why was it so bad you had to kill your own son? But the pastor stayed silent, his eyes fixed on the wall, repeating only, "I did it. Take me to jail." His refusal to explain was a stone dropped into the town's heart, sending ripples of unease through us all. The confession should have brought clarity, but it only deepened the mystery. Why would a man of God, a pillar of our community, murder his own flesh and blood? The town began to whisper a different story, one that never made it to the police reports. Caleb was the one who hurt Ellie. It wasn't a theory spoken aloud, not at first, but it grew in the silences, in the way people avoided Ellen's gaze, in the way they nodded when Pastor Reynolds' name came up. The timing was too perfect. Caleb's death came just 8 days after Ellie's attack. The pastor, with his quiet strength and unshakable faith, must have learned something. Something so vile it drove him to an unthinkable act. I remember sitting in the diner, listening to Mr. Hargrove, the pharmacist, speak in a low voice. "Reynolds always knew Caleb better than anyone," he said, stirring his coffee. "Maybe the boy let something slip, a word, a look." Others agreed, their voices heavy with conviction. The pastor did what the law couldn't. But how had he known? Had Caleb confessed, his guilt spilling out in a moment of weakness? Had Ellen seen something? A bloodied shirt, a scratch on his arm? Or was it something deeper, a father's instinct, a divine revelation whispered in the dead of night? The questions haunted us, each one a thread in a tapestry we could never fully see. The town's judgment was swift but not unanimous. Some called the pastor a hero, a man who'd sacrificed everything to protect us. "He stopped that boy before he could hurt anyone else," Mrs. Carter said at church, her voice fierce. Others weren't so sure. Tommy's mom, who'd known Caleb since he was a toddler, shook her head. "He was troubled, but not evil," she said, her eyes wet. What if the pastor was wrong? That doubt lingered, a shadow no one could shake. Without Caleb's confession, without the pastor's explanation, we were left with a truth that felt both certain and fragile, like a dream that dissolves at dawn. Months passed, but the wound never healed. Ellie came home from the hospital, her smile gone, her eyes older than her years. The police closed her case, citing a lack of evidence, but we all knew why. The monster was dead, buried in a pine box under a simple stone. Pastor Reynolds was sentenced to life, his silence unbroken even in court. Ellen moved away, unable to face the town that had judged her son. I drive past their old house sometimes, the windows dark, the lawn overgrown. It feels like a relic of a nightmare, a place where the line between justice and sin blurred into something we couldn't name. I still wonder about that night, about what passed between father and son in that quiet room. Did Caleb beg for forgiveness, or did he deny everything? His defiance pushing the pastor to pull the trigger. Did the pastor see Ellie's broken body in his mind, her blood on his son's hands? Or was it something else? A secret so dark it could only be answered with death. The truth is a ghost in this town, felt but never seen. We tell ourselves the pastor did right, that he saved us from a predator. But at night, when the cicadas fall silent, I hear the echo of that gunshot, and I wonder if we'll ever know. The kitchen was a prison of routine, its air heavy with the scent of dish soap and fading sunlight. Pamela Bailey stood at the sink, her hands moving mechanically, scrubbing plates as the world outside seemed to hold its breath. Through the double-hung window she watched Marina, her 4-year-old daughter, playing in the front yard, her laughter a fragile melody against the hum of a Tennessee afternoon. The year was 1987, and Union City felt like a town forgotten by time, its streets lined with weathered houses and secrets whispered behind closed doors. Pamela's eyes flicked down to the soapy water, her mind adrift in the weight of motherhood, the endless demands of a life she wasn't sure she was ready for. Then it came, a sharp, piercing screech of tires, like a scream tearing through the stillness. Her heart stopped. She looked up and the yard was empty. Marina was gone. The plate slipped from Pamela's hands, shattering in the sink, but she barely noticed. She bolted outside, her bare feet slapping against the warm grass, her voice raw as she screamed Marina's name. The street was deserted, save for the fading dust cloud left by a red car speeding away, its Kentucky license plates glinting in the dying light. McCracken County, Pamela thought, the details searing into her mind. Her chest tightened, a choking panic clawing at her throat. She ran to the edge of the yard, scanning the horizon, but there was nothing. No laughter, no tiny figure in a yellow dress, just an oppressive silence that swallowed her cries. Neighbors emerged, drawn by her screams, their faces a blur of concern and fear. Someone called the police, but Pamela barely registered their words. All she could see was that car, its taillights burning like eyes in her memory. Hours earlier, at a gas station down the road, Pamela had seen that same red car. Marina, impatient for candy, had darted ahead, her small feet pounding the pavement. Pamela had followed, calling her name, only to find her daughter frozen, staring up at a man leaning over her. His face was unremarkable, his smile too wide, his voice too soft. When Pamela approached, he'd mumbled an excuse and retreated to his car, the red car with McCracken plates. She'd scolded Marina, her heart racing, but thought nothing more of it. Now, standing in the empty yard, the memory felt like a warning. She'd ignored. He took her, Pamela thought, the certainty like a knife in her gut. She told the police everything, the car, the man, the gas station encounter. They nodded, scribbling notes, but their eyes held a skepticism that made her want to scream. The investigation began with a frenzy. Union City police swarmed the town, their sirens a constant wail in the humid air. They tracked the man with the red car to his home in Kentucky, a modest house on a quiet street. He admitted to speaking to Marina at the gas station, his voice calm, almost rehearsed. He consented to a search, and the officers found nothing. No trace of Marina, no evidence of a crime. They ruled him out, their focus shifting to Pamela's family. Her stepfather, Johnny, and Marina's biological father were questioned, their alibis airtight. Weeks passed, and the case grew cold, the town's hope fading like the summer heat. Pamela sat in her living room, staring at Marina's toys, each one a reminder of the void in her heart. The whispers started then, neighbors wondering if Pamela knew more than she was saying, their eyes sharp with suspicion. 6 weeks later, a private investigator named Stan Caves entered Pamela's life. Hired by her desperate family, he was a man of quiet intensity, his questions probing deeper than the police's ever had. They sat in her kitchen, a tape recorder humming between them, its red light a silent witness. Pamela spoke haltingly, her voice cracking as she recounted the day Marina vanished. But then, something shifted. Her words grew frantic, her hands trembling as she described Marina's misbehavior, the tantrums that pushed her to the edge. She wouldn't stop, Pamela whispered, her eyes distant. I just wanted her to listen. She confessed to snapping, spinning around and striking Marina on the back of the head. The blow was too hard, sending the girl stumbling into a table, her temple smashing against its sharp corner. Pamela rushed to her, but Marina was still, her eyes empty. She was gone. Pamela's voice broke as she described hiding Marina's body in her car's trunk, the weight of her daughter's lifeless form burning into her soul. She drove to Martin, a nearby town where she met a family friend, P.L. Summers, at a bridge on Campground Road. Under the cover of night, they carried Marina's body to the river's edge and tossed it into the Obion, its slow-moving waters swallowing her daughter whole. Stan Caves sat frozen, his face pale. He asked Pamela to confirm her story, and when she nodded, tears streaming down her face, he stopped the tape. I have to tell the police, he said, his voice heavy. Pamela only nodded, her world collapsing around her. The police arrested Pamela for second-degree murder, their faces grim as they cuffed her. Divers scoured the Obion, their boat slicing through the murky water. But days passed with no trace of Marina. The river, sluggish and secretive, held its secrets tight. Detectives questioned Pamela again, pressing her on the details. That's when she shattered their expectations. "I lied," she said, her voice steady now, her eyes blazing. She claimed the confession was coerced, that Stan Caves had threatened her with the electric chair. She'd been on antidepressants, released from a psychiatric hospital days before, her mind clouded by grief and medication. The real killer, she insisted, was P.L. Summers. Not a friend, but her abuser, a man who'd tormented her for years. She accused him of abducting Marina, of using her disappearance to punish Pamela for rejecting him. The detectives visited Summers, a man in his 60s with a weathered face and a defiant glare. He denied everything, calling Pamela a pathological liar. He claimed their relationship was a brief fling, long over, and swore he didn't even know she had a daughter. His alibis checked out, and the police let him go. But months later, Summers was arrested for molesting a 9-year-old boy. His name splashed across local papers. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation. Pamela's accusations, once dismissed, now carried a chilling weight. Had she been telling the truth about Summers? Or was she weaving a web of lies to cover her own guilt? Years passed, and Pamela tried to rebuild her life. She moved to Mayfield, Kentucky, and gave birth to a son, Casey, in 1990. For 12 years, they lived quietly, the shadow of Marina's disappearance a constant weight. But on April 22, 2002, days after the 15th anniversary of Marina's loss, Pamela's darkness resurfaced. She blindfolded Casey, promising a surprise, and drove him to a cemetery. When he removed the blindfold, he saw a child-sized gravestone, the word "son" etched into its surface. Before he could react, Pamela lunged, a knife flashing in her hand. She stabbed him in the neck and shoulder, her face a mask of anguish. Casey fought back, escaping with minor wounds, and Pamela was arrested again. She claimed no memory of the attack, her mind a blank slate. Charged with attempted murder, she pleaded no contest to second-degree assault, serving 6 years of a 10-year sentence. The police reopened Marina's case, but no new evidence emerged. Some detectives clung to Pamela's original confession, pointing to her attack on Casey as proof of her capacity for violence. Others weren't so sure. A report surfaced of a girl resembling Marina seen at a Memphis hair salon 6 days after her disappearance. 2 stylists claimed a child, accompanied by 2 women and a boy, sobbed for her mother, her name whispered as Marina. The lead went nowhere, dismissed after a brief investigation. But it fueled a darker theory, that Marina hadn't been killed, but sold, part of a shadowy network stretching back to Georgia Tan, a Memphis woman who trafficked thousands of children decades earlier. Tan's operation, cloaked in legitimacy, had left a legacy of pain, and some wondered if Marina had been its latest victim. The man in the red car remained a ghost, his role never fully explored. Had he been a decoy, a cog in a larger machine? Or was Pamela's story a desperate lie to mask her own crime? The Obion River kept its silence, its waters flowing past the bridge where Marina's body may or may not have been cast. Pamela lived out her days in Mayfield, a pariah haunted by her past. Casey, scarred but alive, carried the weight of his mother's betrayal. And Marina, whether lost to the river or to a fate far worse, remained a question without an answer, her laughter echoing in the dreams of those who loved her. In the summer of 1989, the air in Carta turned sour, like the breath of something ancient stirring beneath the Baltic waves. My name is Marco, and I'm from Estonia, a speck of a country tucked in Russia's shadow, where the forests whisper and the sea keeps secrets. Carta, a small town on the island of Hiiumaa, was my home, a place of salt-streaked cottages and endless skies, where life moved to the rhythm of the tides. But that summer, the rhythm broke. I was 20, working. At my uncle's fish market, my hands raw from scaling cod when the first whispers began. Something was wrong in Carta. The old women at the harbor crossed themselves, their eyes darting to the horizon. The men drank more vodka than usual, their laughter brittle, and I felt it too, a heaviness in the air, like the town was holding its breath, waiting for a storm that never showed. Estonia in those days was a land under siege, not by armies but by ideas. The Soviet grip had tightened since the 1940s, turning us into strangers in our own homes. In Carta, we were fishermen mostly, hauling nets under a sky that never seemed to brighten. But there were others, wreckers they called them, who dove into the sunken graves of World War II ships, pulling up rusted metals and tarnished gold. The wrecks littered the waters around Hiiumaa, relics of battles between Germans and Russians, and the wreckers made good money. But the fishermen hated them. "You're disturbing the dead," my uncle would mutter, spitting into the sea. The Soviets encouraged the wreckers, paying them well to strip the past, while the fishermen clung to their nets and their stories. Stories of the Hiiumaa witches, who could summon storms or curse a man's bloodline for generations. The witches were a legend, but in Carta, legends had teeth. Old folks spoke of a fisherman who'd insulted a coven centuries ago, dooming his descendants to misfortune. Half the fishing families claimed his blood, and every lost boat, every empty net, was blamed on the curse. I didn't believe it, not then. I was young, skeptical, raised on Soviet propaganda that scoffed at superstition. But I couldn't ignore the tension, the way neighbors avoided each other's eyes, the way the wind seemed to carry voices that weren't there. Carta was a powder keg, and that summer someone lit the fuse. The first spark came on a Saturday night, when the town was lulled by the clink of glasses and the scent of fried herring. The Russian cafe on Vana Street was the heart of Carta, a place where fishermen and wreckers drank side by side, their grudges buried under vodka and laughter. I wasn't there that night. I was at home, nursing a cold. But I heard the story from my cousin who'd been passing by when it happened. The cafe exploded. A wave of heat and light shattered the windows, sending glass and screams into the night. The kitchen had filled with gas, someone said, and a spark, maybe a cigarette, maybe something else, set it off. When the fire was doused, the toll was unthinkable. 5 dead, their bodies blackened in the wreckage, and 14 more carted to the mainland, some with burns that would scar them for life. The police swarmed the ruins, their boots crunching on charred wood. At first, they blamed dissidents, Estonians fighting for freedom from Soviet rule. But then they found her, Dasha Brova, a 16-year-old waitress, her body untouched by the flames, lying near the gas valves. She'd done Dasha was a quiet girl, with pale hair and a smile that made you trust her. She served coffee at the cafe, studied hard, had friends who swore she was kind. But that night she'd turned the valves, let the gas hiss, and struck the match. Why? The police had no answers. Her parents wept, saying she'd been happy, normal. Her diary, found in her room, was filled with poems about the sea, not a hint of rage. It didn't make sense. I walked past the cafe the next day, the air thick with ash, and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. Dasha's eyes in my memory seemed to hold a secret I couldn't name. The town was still reeling when the second blow struck. 2 days later. It was a Monday morning, the kind of gray dawn that makes you want to stay in bed. I was at the market, stacking crates, when I heard the screech of tires and a sound I'll never forget. A dull, sickening thud. A crowd was already forming by the time I ran to the main road. A car had plowed into a line of school children. They'd been waiting for the bus, their backpacks bright against the mist. When a rusty sedan veered off the road, its driver slumped over the wheel. 4 children lay still, their bodies twisted, while others screamed, blood pooling on the asphalt. I stood there frozen, as medics rushed in, their faces pale. The driver was a fisherman named Yuri, a Russian who'd moved to Karta under Soviet orders. He was drunk, reeking of vodka at 7:30 in the morning, but that wasn't the worst of it. He laughed. As the police dragged him from the car, his laughter echoed, sharp and unhinged like he'd seen something hilarious in the carnage. Witnesses swore he'd swerved deliberately, his foot heavy on the gas. I saw him in the police car, his head thrown back, counting in Russian. Odin, DVA, Try, Chatire. 1, 2, 3, 4. He was counting the dead. My stomach churned, and I turned away. The image burned into my mind. Yuri had been a quiet man, a loner who kept to his boat. What had possessed him? The town whispered of the curse, of witches' revenge. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper, something human had broken in him. Karta was a wound now, bleeding fear and grief. We buried the children on Friday, the church packed with mourners, their sobs mingling with the wind outside. I stood at the back, my hands clenched, watching the small coffins disappear into the earth. The whole town was there, or so we thought. It wasn't until later, when we walked to the cemetery, that someone noticed the absence of the Tam family. They lived on the edge of town, a quiet couple with 2 kids, Eric and Lena, aged 11 and 7. No one had seen them at the funeral. Not even a shadow in the pews. A knot formed in my chest. Something was wrong. A group of neighbors went to check on them, their footsteps heavy on the gravel road. I wasn't there, but I heard the story from my uncle, who'd been among them. The house was too quiet. The front door was ajar, swaying in the breeze. Inside, they found blood, streaks on the walls, pools on the floor. Eric and Lena's parents were dead, their throats cut as they slept. The children were in the kitchen, sitting at the table, their hands stained red, a pair of kitchen knives. Between them, Eric had convinced Lena to do it. He'd whispered to her in the dark, told her it was the only way. Why? No one knew. The police took them away, their faces blank, as if the act had drained them of life. I saw the house later, its windows dark, and felt a coldness that lingered in my bones. The week of horrors left Karta shattered. We stopped sending our children to school, stopped working, stopped living. The curse was real. That's what they said. The old women at the harbor, the fishermen who'd once scoffed. Wreckers began throwing their treasures back into the sea. Medals, coins, relics of the dead, hoping to appease the spirits they'd disturbed. Others left offerings in the woods, bread and flowers for the Huma witches, begging for mercy. I saw it one night, a group of men slipping into the forest, their lanterns flickering like ghosts. They believed, and in their belief, I saw something older, something primal, a fear that lived in our blood, coded in us since the days we huddled in caves watching shadows dance on the walls. I don't believe in witches, not really, but I believe in us, in the way fear can twist a heart, turn a girl like Dasha into a killer, a man like Yuri into a monster, a boy like Eric into something unspeakable. What happened in Karta wasn't magic. It was us, unraveling, our seams, splitting under the weight of a world that had never let us breathe. I still live here, in this town of whispers and waves, but I walk carefully now, my eyes on the horizon. The storm may have passed, but the air still hums with its echo. The dawn was a thief, stealing the night's darkness but leaving a chill that clung to my bones. I sat behind the counter of the petrol station, a crumbling outpost on the edge of Leeds. its neon sign flickering like a dying star. The clock read 6:15 a.m. The world outside bathed in a gray half-light that made everything feel unreal, like a dream I couldn't wake from. My name's Laura, and this was my routine. Early shifts to pay for uni, trading sleep for textbooks and a paycheck. The station was quiet. The only sound, the faint hum of the fridge and the rustle of pages as I read. But then, a prickle ran down my spine. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoed from the lot. You ever feel someone watching you before you see them? Like their gaze is a weight pressing against your skin? I looked up and he was there. The bell above the door jangled, sharp and jarring, as the man stepped inside. He was in his 40s, maybe 50s, his mop of dark curly hair and tired eyes reminding me of Mark Bolan from my dad's old T-Rex albums. But this wasn't the glamorous rock star of my childhood. His face was gaunt, cheekbones sharp as knives, his skin stretched tight like paper over a skull. He wore a sheepskin coat, faded and stained, a pink t-shirt that screamed of better days, and bell-bottom jeans frayed at the hems. The outfit might have been stylish once, but now it hung on him like a costume, making him look like a relic from a forgotten era. He moved slowly, his eyes locked on me, a smile curling his lips that didn't reach his gaze. My stomach twisted, a warning I couldn't name. I forced a smile, my customer service mask slipping into place. "Morning," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He didn't answer, just grabbed a pint of milk from the fridge and sauntered to the counter. "That and 20 quid on pump 3, he said, his voice low, almost a purr. I rang him up, my fingers, quick on the till, eager to get him out. But he didn't move. He leaned forward, his elbows on the counter, his eyes boring into mine. "You're a pretty young lady, aren't you?" The words slithered out, slow and deliberate. The pretty, drawn out like he was tasting it. My skin crawled, 1,000 invisible ants marching up my arms. I mumbled a thanks, stepping back. But his gaze followed, heavy and unyielding. I remembered a story my coworker Jess had told me, whispered during a late shift when the station was empty. A woman who used to work here years ago had been cornered by a customer after closing. He'd seemed normal at first, chatting about the weather, but then he'd followed her to her car, his words turning dark, his hands reaching for her. She'd quit the next day, and Jess swore the station felt different after that, like it held on to the fear. I'd laughed it off then, called it a ghost story. But now, with this man's eyes on me, the memory felt like a warning. "Don't engage," I told myself, turning to the stock list on the counter, pretending to check it. "Just wait him out. Where you going?" His voice cut through the silence, sharp now, a hint of irritation. I froze, my heart thudding. "Just checking stock," I lied, my smile tight. He leaned closer, the counter no longer a barrier. "Don't walk away from me. I'm trying to talk to you." The aggression in his tone was unmistakable, a blade hidden in velvet. I forced myself to meet his gaze, my hands trembling behind the counter. "I'm on the clock," I said, my voice firm despite the fear coiling in my chest. "I've got work to do." He waved a hand, dismissive. "I'm a customer. I don't get to talk to pretty girls like you often. Let me make the most of it." The air grew, thick, the hum of the fridge a distant drone. I tried again, my words careful. "I appreciate the compliment, but my boss will have my head if I don't finish this." He laughed, a short, ugly sound. "I'll deal with your boss." Then softer, his eyes glinting. "I wish I was as pretty as you." The words were wrong, twisted, like a compliment warped into something sinister. My throat tightened, my mind racing for an escape. "That's not appropriate," I said, my voice shaking. "Please just pay and go." He snorted, leaning closer, his breath sour with tobacco. Don't you like being pretty? The question hung between us, a trap I didn't know how to avoid. I stepped back, my shoulder brushing the wall, the cold plaster grounding me. I don't appreciate your tone, I said, louder now, my fear giving way to anger. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. His smile widened, predatory. What, you're gonna call the coppers just 'cause I called you pretty? You having a laugh? I didn't answer, my hand inching toward my phone. He noticed, his voice dropping to a growl. If I looked like you, I'd stay home all day. No clothes, just staring in the mirror. The image was vile, invasive, burning into my mind. I gripped my phone, my fingers slick with sweat, and dialed 999, my eyes never leaving his. He laughed, a mocking sound, but his voice changed, deepening into something primal. If you've got a problem being pretty, I can fix that. I'll come over this counter and smash your face till you don't look human. My breath caught, my vision narrowing to his face, his eyes gleaming with intent. Your friends won't know. Your family won't know you. You'll be as ugly outside as you are inside. The operator's voice crackled in my ear, calm and distant, but I could barely focus, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. I'd love to cut your face off and wear it, he said, his voice a hiss. I'd stand in front of the mirror wearing your knickers, pretending I'm you, I snapped, my fear boiling into rage. Police are coming, I shouted, my voice shaking but fierce. Get out before they nick you. He paused, his smile faltering, then started toward the door, his words trailing behind him. I'll be back tomorrow to teach you manners. The bell jangled. As he left, the sound a release of the tension that had choked the room. I sank to the floor, my phone still pressed to my ear, tears burning my eyes as the operator promised help was on the way. The police arrived minutes later, their boots loud on the linoleum. I showed them the CCTV footage, my hands still trembling. One officer recognized him immediately. That's Charles, goes by Chaz sometimes. Or Alexei Bowie if he's feeling fancy. He was a known harasser, targeting women who couldn't walk away. Shop clerks, waitresses, anyone trapped by their job. They'd had complaints for months, and he was weeks from being charged. I never saw him again. Not at the station. Not in Leeds. But his face haunts me, his voice echoing in quiet moments. I quit the job soon after, unable to shake the fear that he'd return, his eyes finding me in the dawn's gray light. It was the sky that warned me, a bruise of clouds rolling over Nebraska like a fist ready to strike. Early one summer afternoon, I was driving to my weekend shift at the gas station, the radio crackling with country tunes and the scent of warm asphalt seeping through my open window. Nebraska's highways were my sanctuary, endless stretches of gold and green, broken only by a windmill or a lone barn, the horizon a promise of forever. But that day, the promise felt like a lie. As I glanced west, the clouds were no ordinary storm front. They were a wall, black and churning, swallowing the sun with a hunger that made my skin prickle. Something bad was coming. I gripped the wheel tighter, my heart thudding, and pressed the gas, eager to reach the station before the world unraveled. The Chew gas station was a speck on Highway 81, a squat building with 2 pumps and a flickering neon sign that read, "Fuel and Snacks." I pulled in just as the first gusts whipped dust across the lot, the air heavy with the tang of ozone. My coworker Tommy was already there, his baseball cap pulled low, his face tense as he scanned the sky. "Heard the warnings on the radio," he said, his voice clipped. "This one's gonna be ugly." We moved fast, locking windows, securing the outdoor racks and checking the pumps. The station was our fortress, but it felt flimsy against the storm's growl. We had to be ready. Tommy fueled the generator while I gathered flashlights and batteries, the weight of the task grounding me even as the wind howled louder, rattling the glass doors. By the time we finished, the sky was a cauldron, lightning, flickering like veins beneath the clouds. The radio spat urgent alerts. Tornado watch in effect. Seek shelter immediately. We'd planned to ride it out in the station's office, a cramped room with a desk and a first aid kit, but we didn't expect company. They came one by one, desperate shadows in the storm. First was a man in a denim jacket, his truck parked, crookedly, his eyes wide with fear. "Can I stay?" he asked, his voice shaking. Then a woman in a business suit, her sedan coated in dust, her hands trembling as she clutched her keys. Last was a young mother, her minivan screeching to a stop, her 2 daughters, maybe 6 and 8, clinging to her. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "We can't make it home." We couldn't say no. The station wasn't built for this, but turning them away felt like signing their death warrant. The wind was a living thing now, clawing at the station, the air thick with the scent of rain and torn earth. We herded everyone into the office, 7 of us packed into a space meant for 2. The mother, whose name I learned was Sarah, held her daughters, Lily and Emma, their faces pale, their eyes darting to the ceiling as debris thudded against the roof. The man in the denim jacket, who mumbled his name was Ray, paced in the corner, muttering about his truck. The businesswoman Claire sat rigid, her knuckles white around her phone, though the signal was long gone. Tommy and I stood by the door, our flashlights casting jittery beams, trying to keep calm for the others. But calm was a lie. The radio's warnings grew shrill, and then it came. The wail of tornado sirens piercing the storm's roar like a scream from the earth itself. The sound broke something in the girls. Lily sobbed, her small body shaking, while Emma wailed, "I want to go home." Sarah rocked them, her own eyes wet, whispering promises she couldn't keep. "Stay with me," she said, her voice a fragile thread. The wind screamed louder, and a crash shook the station. Something heavy hitting the roof, maybe a branch, maybe worse. Ray cursed, his pacing frantic, while Claire's breath came in sharp gasps. Then another crash, louder, and the unmistakable shatter of glass. The front window was gone. The noise was deafening, a bomb of sound that sent the girls into hysterics, their screams blending with the storm's fury. I glanced at Tommy, his face pale, and knew we were all thinking the same thing. We might not make it. The office was our only shield, its walls trembling as the storm raged. Debris pelted the building, each impact a jolt to my nerves, the air thick with dust and fear. Lily and Emma's cries were relentless, their voices raw, and Sarah's attempts to soothe them faltered. "You're safe," I said, crouching beside them, my voice steadier than I felt. I told them stories, silly ones about my dog, about summer fairs, anything to drown out the sirens. Tommy joined in, his drawl calm, spinning tales of fishing, trips, and slowly the girls' sobs quieted, their eyes fixed on us like lifelines. But the storm wasn't done. Another crash rocked the station, and Claire snapped. "I can't stay here," she shouted, lunging for the door, her eyes wild. With panic, Tommy grabbed her, his arms strong, but she fought, clawing and screaming. "You'll die out there," he yelled, his voice cutting through her hysteria. Ray and I rushed to help, pinning her to the floor as she thrashed, her cries mingling with the girls, who'd started screaming again. Sarah held them tight, her face a mask of terror while Claire sobbed, I'm sorry." It took all 3 of us to calm her, her body going limp as the fight drained out. We were all breaking, piece by piece. The storm's roar was relentless, a beast trying to tear us apart. But in that moment I felt a strange unity, a shared will to survive, to protect those girls, to hold on. The storm passed as suddenly as it came, the wind dying to a whisper, the sirens falling silent. We waited, huddled in the office, our breaths shallow, until Tommy cracked the door. The world was unrecognizable. The station was a ruin. Glass littered the floor, snacks and magazines scattered like confetti. The pumps leaning drunkenly. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of wet earth, and the sky was a bruised purple, stars peeking through the clouds. We stepped out, glass crunching under our boots, and surveyed the wreckage. Sarah's minivan was dented, Ray's truck scratched, but Claire's sedan had taken the worst, a branch through its windshield. We'd been lucky. Sarah hugged us, her voice thick with gratitude, her daughters clinging to her legs. "You kept them calm," she said, tears in her eyes. Ray shook our hands, his earlier panic replaced by quiet relief. Claire, still shaken, mumbled her thanks, her face pale. They drove off one by one, their taillights fading into the night, leaving Tommy and me alone in the wreckage. "What in the hell just happened?" Tommy said, his voice low, and I laughed, a shaky sound that felt like release. We'd faced the storm, held strangers together, and come out alive. But as I looked at the shattered station, the dark fields, beyond, I felt the storm's echo, a reminder that some things once broken never fully mend. The Nebraska sky was a canvas of endless possibility, its golden fields stretching to the horizon under a dome of blue. I drove my beat-up Chevy along the highway, the hum of the engine blending with the rustle of prairie grass. It was a Saturday, afternoon in May, the kind of day that made you love this state, open, free, alive. But as I glanced to the west, my heart sank. A wall of black clouds loomed, jagged and angry, swallowing the sunlight like a beast. You ever see a storm that feels alive, like it's hunting you? I tightened my grip on the wheel, the radio crackling with warnings of a tornado watch. My shift at the gas station was about to start, and I had a feeling this wouldn't be an ordinary day. The station was a relic, its faded sign barely readable, the pumps standing like sentinels under flickering fluorescent lights. I parked, the gravel crunching under my tires, and stepped into the cool air, heavy with the scent of gasoline and earth. My co-worker Jake was already there, his face tense as he listened to the radio. "They're saying it's gonna be bad," he said, his voice low. We moved fast, locking windows, securing outdoor signs, and dragging chairs inside. The sky darkened, the clouds now a swirling mass, their edges lit by flashes of lightning. I checked the pumps, my hands steady despite the knot in my stomach. Jake fueled the generator, a lifeline if the power went out. We stocked the office, our designated shelter, with flashlights, batteries, and a first aid kit. The radio, our only link to the outside world. Jake told me a story once, late at night when the station was quiet. Years ago, a tornado had torn through a nearby town, leveling a gas station like this one. The workers had hidden in the basement, but one didn't make it. A young guy found days later in a field, his body twisted like a rag doll. "Some say he's still out there," Jake had said, his eyes distant, "wandering the plains when the storms come." I'd brushed it off, called it a tall tale. But now, with the sky turning black, the story felt like a shadow at my back. We expected a quiet shift, figured people would stay home. We were wrong. Over the next hour, 3 cars pulled in, their drivers desperate. First was a man, middle-aged, his eyes wide with worry, his truck packed with supplies. Then a woman alone, her hands shaking as she clutched her keys. Last was a mother with 2 young girls, maybe 6 and 8, their faces pale, clinging to her skirt. "Can we stay?" the mother asked, her voice trembling. "The storm's too close." We couldn't say no. The station wasn't built for this, but we offered drinks and snacks, trying to ease their nerves. The girls sat on the floor, coloring books forgotten, their eyes darting to the windows as the wind began to howl, a low, mournful sound that set my teeth on edge. The radio crackled, a voice cutting through the static. Tornado warning. Seek shelter immediately. The sea siren wailed in the distance, a piercing scream that made the girls cry, their sobs sharp and frantic. "Mommy, I want to go home," the younger one wailed, her voice breaking my heart. We herded everyone to the office, a cramped room, with a desk, a chair, and barely enough space for 8 people. The mother held her girls, whispering comforts I knew she didn't feel. The wind grew louder, a roar like a freight train, shaking the walls. I shut the door, the sound muffled but not gone, the siren still piercing through. The girls clung to their mother, their cries softer now, but their fear was a living thing, filling the room. Then it happened, a deafening crash as something heavy smashed through the station's front window. The sound was like a bomb, the walls trembling and the girls screamed, their voices raw with terror. I flinched, my heart racing, my eyes meeting Jake's. "Stay here," he said. But before he could move, the lone woman bolted for the door, her face wild with panic. "I can't stay here," she shouted, clawing at the handle. I lunged after her, grabbing her arm. "You'll die out there," I yelled, my voice hoarse. She fought me, her nails digging into my skin, her screams blending with the wind. Jake and the man joined me, pinning her down as she sobbed, her body shaking. "I'm sorry," she gasped, collapsing, tears streaming down her face. The girls watched, their eyes wide, their cries quieter but no less desperate. We held each other in that tiny room, the wind a monster outside, tearing at the world. I talked to the girls, my voice steady despite my fear, telling them stories of sunny days and picnics, anything to drown out the storm. "We're gonna be okay," I said, over and over, as much for them as for me. The mother nodded, her arms tight around her daughters, her eyes glistening. The man sat silent, his hands clasped, while the woman who'd panicked stared at the floor, her breathing uneven. Hours passed, the wind's roar fading to a low moan. When the radio announced the all clear, we stepped out, the station a wreck. Glass. Everywhere shelves toppled, debris scattered like confetti. The mother hugged us, her voice choked with gratitude. "You saved my girls," she said, and I felt a warmth that didn't erase the fear. The others left, their cars disappearing, into the dawn. Jake and I stood in the ruins, the sky now clear, the prairie stretching out like nothing had happened. But something had changed in me. I hear that siren in my dreams, feel the wind's hunger, see the girls' frightened eyes. Storms aren't just weather, I think now. They're a reminder of how fragile we are, how close we stand to the edge.
The glow of my laptop screen flickered like a dying star, casting cold shadows across my bedroom, as if the digital world was watching me back. It was late, the kind of late where the house felt too quiet, the air heavy with the hum of my own thoughts. My old laptop, a sluggish relic from high school, was on its last legs, its fan wheezing with every click. I needed a new one, fast, for college assignments and the occasional freelance gig that kept me afloat. Money was tight, but the internet promised deals, a siren song I couldn't resist. My sister, always the practical one, suggested Facebook Marketplace, a virtual bazaar of secondhand treasures. I dove in, scrolling through listings, unaware that the shadows were shifting, that something was waiting to find me. The listings blurred together, overpriced MacBooks, sketchy desktops, models too old to be worth the drive. But then I saw it. A sleek, modern laptop barely used, posted by a guy named Brian. The price, $800, was a steal, half what it cost new, and the specs checked out after a quick Google search. My heart raced, a mix of excitement and doubt, like I'd stumbled on a secret too good to be true. I messaged Brian, my fingers trembling, asking if it was still available. He replied within minutes, his words clipped but polite, saying he could meet the next afternoon after work. "Bring cash," he wrote, and I agreed, the promise of a deal pulling me deeper into his web. We settled on a shopping center parking lot, a busy spot near town, safe enough with my sister tagging along. But the night felt heavier now, the screen's glow a warning I couldn't read. The next day the sky was gray, the air damp with the threat of rain. My sister drove, her eyes on the road, her voice light as she teased me about my laptop obsession. The shopping center was bustling, cars circling like sharks, but I felt a prickle on my neck, like we were being watched. We pulled into a quiet corner of the lot as Brian had instructed, the asphalt cracked and littered with cigarette butts. I messaged him, confirming we were there, describing our car, a silver sedan, nothing flashy. He said he was on his way, but the minutes stretched, each one heavier than the last. We waited, the radio humming softly, my sister scrolling her phone. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I messaged again, my thumbs slick with sweat, asking where he was. No reply, but the message was read, the blue ticks a silent taunt. 30 minutes in, frustration turned to unease. Why would he stand us up? My sister shrugged, suggesting he'd realized the laptop was worth more, or maybe he'd sold it to someone else. We drove home, the rain starting to fall, smearing the windshield like tears. The house welcomed us, but it felt different. Its warmth, a fragile illusion. I checked Marketplace again, my stomach twisting when I saw Brian's profile. Gone, his listing deleted, my messages blocked. The digital world had erased him, but I felt his presence, a shadow lingering just out of sight. I tried to shake it off, diving back into laptop searches, but the unease grew, a knot in my chest that wouldn't loosen. Something was wrong, and I was too late to see it. That evening the house was quiet, our parents at work, the hum of the fridge the only sound. I was in my bedroom, the laptop's glow my only light, when my sister burst in, her face pale. "There's a noise at the back window," she said, her voice tight, her eyes wide with fear. My heart lurched, the room tilting as I followed her to the living room. The air was thick, charged, like the moment before a storm. We paused, listening, our breaths shallow. Then it came. The faint creak of the back door. A sound that didn't belong. A violation of our sanctuary. My sister gasped, her hand gripping my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Someone was in our house, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me. It was Brian. "Run!" My mind screamed, a command I couldn't ignore. We bolted to my bedroom, shutting the door, our breaths ragged in the dark. The house was no longer ours. It was his, claimed by his presence. We pressed our ears to the door, listening as footsteps moved through the hallway, slow and deliberate like a predator stalking prey. They paused, then entered my sister's room, drawers sliding open, their contents spilling onto the floor. My heart pounded, my vision blurring as I realized he was close. Too close. We couldn't stay, couldn't wait for him to find us. I pointed to my window, the only way out of our single-story home. Escape, I thought, a vow I had to keep. I slid it open, my hands shaking, the cold night air rushing in like a lifeline. The window groaned, a betrayal that echoed in the quiet, and the footsteps stopped, then turned toward us. Move now. I climbed out, my sneakers hitting the grass, my sister right behind me. The hallway door creaked open as she scrambled through, her breath a sob in the dark. We ran, The yard a blur of shadows, the neighbor's house a beacon across the street. The night was alive, watching, its silence a weight that pressed down on us. We pounded on their door, our fists desperate until they answered, their faces pale with confusion. We were safe, but the house wasn't. Its windows dark, its secrets stolen. My sister called the police, her voice shaking. As I stood frozen, the memory of those footsteps burning into my mind. Brian was in there searching, claiming, and I wondered what he wanted. My money, my laptop, or something worse. The police arrived, their lights flashing red and blue, painting the street in chaos. They stormed the house, their voices sharp, their boots heavy on the floorboards. They found him in the basement, Brian crouched among old boxes, his eyes wild but empty. He'd followed us from the parking lot, hidden among the other cars, his plan unfolding in the shadows. The $800 I'd brought was his target, or so I told myself, but his presence in our home felt personal, a violation deeper than theft. The cops questioned us, their faces grim, their notebooks filling with our story. The house was ours again, but it felt tainted, its walls echoing his footsteps, his intent. They found no laptop, no evidence of a sale, just a man who'd seen an opportunity and taken it, a predator in a digital mask. I couldn't sleep that night or the next. The memory of the back door creaking, the footsteps in the hall, was a nightmare that blurred the line between dream and reality. What if we hadn't heard him? What if we'd stayed? The questions were anchors, pulling me into a sea of fear. The house wasn't home anymore. It was a trap, a place where strangers could enter, where safety was a lie. I stopped using Marketplace, deleted my account, but the fear lingered. A ghost in every notification, every stranger's face. Brian was gone, locked away, but his shadow remained, a reminder that the digital world could reach into mine, that a deal too good to be true was a door to something dark. The forest swallowed me whole, its shadows clawing at my skin as I realized I was alone, with something or someone watching from the trees. I was a senior in high school, lanky and quick, enrolled in Mr. Johnson's Speed and Agility Development class, an easy elective that promised sprints and games instead of lectures. That spring day, Mr. Johnson announced we'd hike through the woods across from our rural school, a network of trails winding through dense pines and tangled underbrush. The idea sounded fun, a break from the gym's stale air. But as we crossed the road and entered the forest, a chill settled in my chest. This place doesn't feel right. The trail was narrow, its dirt packed hard by years of footsteps, flanked by trees that leaned inward, their branches weaving a canopy that dimmed the midday sun. Mr. Johnson led the group, his whistle glinting as he jogged ahead, urging us to keep pace. My friends and I hung back, joking to mask the unease creeping up our spines. The forest was too quiet, the birdsong faint, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and pine sap. It's just a hike, I told myself, but my eyes kept darting to the shadows, half expecting something to move. I remembered a story my cousin had told me about a hiker who'd vanished in these woods years ago, his backpack found torn open by a pond. Just a rumor, I thought, but it clung to me like the forest's damp air. We jogged deeper into the trail, the path narrowing until branches scraped my arms. My shoelace came untied, flapping against my sneaker, and I stopped to fix it. "Go on, I'll catch up," I called to my friends, kneeling to tie the knot. They nodded, their voices fading as they rounded a bend. The forest closed in, the silence pressing against my ears. I stood, my breath catching as I realized how far behind I'd fallen. Where are they? I jogged forward, my footsteps muffled by the dirt, but the trail split into 3 paths, each vanishing into the gloom. Which way? My heart ticked faster, my palms sweaty. I chose the middle path, hoping it was right. But the forest grew thicker, the light dimmer, the air colder. I ran faster, my lungs burning, scanning for any sign of the group. The trail twisted, roots snaking across the ground, threatening to trip me. They can't be far. But the silence was broken by a rustle to my left, faint but deliberate, like footsteps pacing mine. I slowed, my eyes straining through the trees. There, something moved. A figure, tall and lean, with long black hair and a green shirt, slipped between the trunks, his movements fluid, almost ghostly. Who is that? My stomach twisted, my instincts screaming to run, but curiosity held me. I raised a hand, hesitating. "Hey," I called, my voice weak, swallowed by the forest. The figure froze, then turned, his face obscured by shadow, and bolted deeper into the woods. He saw me. I stood there, my heart pounding, debating whether to follow the trail or turn back. He's just a hiker, right? But the way he'd run, sudden and panicked, felt wrong. I jogged forward, hoping to find my class, but the rustling returned. Closer now, just off the path. He's following me. I stopped, my breath shallow, scanning the trees. Nothing. Just endless trunks and shadows. Then behind a thick oak I caught a glimpse. His green shirt, his hair swaying as he ducked out of sight. He's hiding. My skin crawled, the forest no longer a trail but a labyrinth, every tree a potential threat. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. No answer, but the rustling grew louder, deliberate, circling me. "Run." The command exploded in my mind and I bolted, my sneakers pounding the dirt, branches whipping my face. The forest blurred, a tunnel of green and brown, my breath ragged as I veered down random paths, hoping to lose him. "He's right behind you." I didn't dare look back, but I felt him, his presence heavy, his footsteps echoing mine. The trail split again and I swerved left at the last second, crashing through underbrush, thorns tearing at my legs. "Keep moving." My lungs screamed, my vision swimming, but I pushed on, the forest a maze with no end. The path opened to a small clearing, a pond glinting darkly at its center, its surface still as glass. A rickety dock jutted out, surrounded by dense trees. No way out. My heart sank as I scanned the shore, the forest closing in like a trap. The rustling returned, fast and close, from the right. "He's here." I spun, catching a glimpse of his green shirt as he emerged, his face still hidden, his pace relentless. "He's coming for you." I turned and sprinted back down the path, my legs burning, my mind a whirlwind of fear and instinct. "You can outrun him." I wove through the trees, choosing paths at random, my body driven by a primal need to survive. The forest seemed to shift, the trails looping back on themselves, the light fading as clouds rolled overhead. How long have I been running? My chest heaved, my throat raw, but the footsteps behind me slowed, then stopped. Did I lose him? I crouched behind a tree, my breath shallow, listening. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant drip of water. He's gone, but the relief was fleeting. I stood, my legs trembling, and jogged forward, praying for a sign of the trailhead. The forest parted, revealing the familiar path where we'd started, the school's outline faint in the distance. I made it. I ran toward the school, my body heavy with exhaustion, and spotted my class returning from the hike. My friends waved, their faces puzzled. "Where'd you go?" one asked, assuming I'd ditched. I tried to explain, my words tumbling out, but their skeptical glances stopped me. "They don't believe you." Mr. Johnson clapped me on the shoulder, oblivious, and we headed back to class. But the forest's shadow clung to me, its secrets buried in the trees. Who was he? Why did he chase me? Years later, I still see his silhouette. In my dreams, feel his eyes on my back. The woods know, but they'll never tell. The forest exhaled a frozen breath, its silence a veil over secrets too dark to name. After New Year's, when the world felt frayed and heavy, I sought refuge in my family's cabin, a humble lodge in Canada's wilderness, built by my grandparents' hands. Step into that solitude, feel the hush, but sense the shadow waiting. Tucked in a nowhere place off the grid, it was reachable only by snowmobile, a journey through miles of snow-laden trees that seemed to guard their own mysteries. I planned 3 nights there, craving the kind of quiet that could stitch my soul back together. A break from the clamor of life. The cold was fierce, biting through my gloves as I rode, but the cabin's silhouette against the twilight promised warmth, a sanctuary in the endless white. Enter the cabin, embrace the stillness, let the world dissolve. I arrived as dusk fell, the sky a bruise of gray and purple. The door creaked open, revealing a familiar haven, wooden walls worn smooth, a stone hearth waiting to be kindled. I lit the stove, its flames dancing, casting shadows that flickered like half-remembered dreams. Feel the warmth, sink into it, but listen for the unseen. I unpacked in the bedroom, the air thick with the scent of cedar and old blankets, each breath slower, deeper as the forest's hush seeped into me. Within an hour, the weight of the world lifted, time stretching into a gentle rhythm. I cooked dinner. The sizzle of onions, a soft counterpoint to the wind's low moan outside. Savor the peace, hold it close, but know it's fragile. The first night was a gift, sleep wrapping me in a dreamless embrace, the cabin a shield against the cold. Rest now, drift away, but what moves in the dark? Morning dawned, the sun a faint glow through heavy clouds, painting the snow in shades of silver. I rose, my breath visible in the chill, and made breakfast on the stove, coffee steaming, bacon crackling, the scents grounding me in this isolated world. Taste the comfort, feel the calm, but brace for the shift. I needed more wood, so I bundled up, scarf, gloves, boots heavy with purpose, and stepped to the door, ready to face the cold. As I pulled it open, my heart stopped, the world tilting beneath me. Look down, see the truth, feel the dread. Footprints, stark and deep, marred the pristine snow, a trail leading from the forest's edge to the cabin's porch, stopping just short of the threshold. Trace them with your eyes, feel their weight. No, they don't belong. No tire tracks, no snowmobile marks, just human steps, deliberate, unhurried, etched in the night's frozen canvas. I stood frozen, my breath clouding, my pulse a drum in my ears. Who walked here so close while you slept? I scanned the horizon, the forest a wall of silent trees, their branches heavy, unmoving. No sound, no movement, just the prints, a silent accusation. I stepped out, the snow crunching under my boots, and followed the trail, each step a question, each breath a fear. The footprints led into the woods, a path with no origin, no destination, winding through pines that loomed like sentinels. Follow them, seek answers, but feel the forest's gaze. I walked, my scarf damp with breath, the cold seeping through my layers, my mind racing. How could someone be here, in this desolate place without a vehicle? Why approach my cabin only to vanish? Think it's a mistake, cling to reason, but know it's a lie. The road was miles away, the nearest town a day's trek. Nobody wandered here by chance. I considered turning back, the snowmobile's keys a tempting escape, but leaving felt like defeat, a surrender to fear. Stay, convince yourself it's nothing, but is it? I hauled wood from the shed, its weight grounding me, and returned to the cabin, the fire's warmth a fragile comfort. Sit by the flames, watch the windows, see the shadows shift. I settled by the hearth, a book unopened in my lap, my eyes darting to the glass, searching the snow for movement. Hours passed, the sun climbing, its light softening the forest's edges. Feel the day, trust its brightness, but doubt its safety. Restless, I decided to walk, to follow the footprints again, to find some answer, a trapper's camp, a lost hiker, anything to silence the questions gnawing at me. Step into the woods, chase the truth, but beware the cost. I pulled on my jacket, its fabric stiff with frost, and ventured out, the footprints my guide, their edges blurring under new snow. Trace the path, feel the cold, sense the eyes. The forest swallowed me, its air thick with pine and ice, each breath a cloud, each step a test of nerve. I walked for 20 minutes, maybe more, the trail unbroken, leading deeper into the wilderness. No cabins, no signs of life, just the relentless prints, a silent summons. Go further, find the end, but know it's watching. Then, a sound. A sharp crunch like snow breaking under a boot just ahead. Stop, listen, know it's real. My heart leapt, goosebumps prickling my skin, my eyes scanning the trees, their shadows deep and unyielding. Nothing moved, the forest still as death. But I knew what I'd heard. A step, human, deliberate. Look closer, see the void, feel the presence. Someone was there, hidden, maybe 10, 15 feet away, their breath held, their body pressed against a trunk. They see you, don't they? I called out, my voice thin, trembling. Hello? Is anyone there? Speak, wait, hear the silence. No answer, not a rustle, not a whisper, just the weight of unseen eyes. The air grew heavier, the tension a living thing coiling around me, squeezing my chest. They're waiting, aren't they? My mind screamed to run, but my feet faltered, torn between flight and the need to know. Choose now, move, save yourself. I turned, my boots slipping, and ran, the forest blurring into a maze of white and shadow, branches snagging my jacket, my breath a ragged sob. Run, don't stop, don't look back. The crunch of my steps echoed, but I swore I heard another fainter behind me, a rhythm not my own. They're following, aren't they? I reached the cabin, my hands fumbling with the lock, the door slamming, shut behind me, its wood a frail barrier. Lock it, hide, but is it enough? I packed in a frenzy, clothes stuffed into my bag, the fire's warmth mocking my panic. Every sound, the wind, the groan of wood, was a footstep, a hand testing the door. They're out there, closer now, waiting. I locked the cabin, its walls no longer home, and started the snowmobile, its roar a defiance against the silence. Ride away, escape, but carry the fear. The forest rushed past, a blur of snow and shadow, but I felt eyes on me, a presence woven into the trees. I reached the road, my body trembling, my mind replaying that crunch, that silence, that unseen watcher. You're free now, but are you? I haven't returned to the cabin, its memory a ghost, its peace shattered by those footprints. See them still in the snow leading to you? Who walked to my door in the night, stood so close, then hid in the forest? Why were they back, watching, waiting? Feel their gaze even now across the miles. The lodge was my family's refuge, a place of laughter and warmth. But now it's a question mark, a shadow I can't outrun. Recall the fire, the quiet, but know it's gone. I see my grandparents' faces, hear their stories of building it, feel the weight of their legacy tainted by fear. What's out there in the snow, in the places you thought safe? I still hear that crunch in my dreams, still see the forest's edge, still wonder if they're waiting, patient, for my return. You're safe now, but for how long? The snow hides, their tracks but not their intent. A truth I'll carry forever, a chill that never thaws. The forest exhaled frost, its snow-laden branches bowing under the weight of silence, as if the trees themselves were holding secrets too heavy to speak. Every year, Justin and I escape to this frozen wilderness, a ritual carved into our friendship, a chance to trade city noise for the crisp solitude of winter. The forest was our sanctuary, its trails familiar, its cold a sharp embrace that cleared our minds. But this time, the air felt different, charged with a stillness that wasn't peaceful but predatory, like the woods were watching us arrive. We set up camp in a clearing, our tent small against the towering pines, the ground blanketed in untouched snow. The fire we built flickered weakly, its warmth a fragile defiance against the dark, and I felt it. A prickle on my neck, a whisper that something was wrong. Justin, ever the optimist, cracked open a beer, his laughter cutting through the quiet as we arranged our gear. The sky was a bruise of gray, the sun sinking fast, painting the snow in shades of violet and blue. The forest was alive, its silence a lie, broken by the faint rustle of unseen creatures moving just beyond our sight. We fed the fire, its flames dancing, casting shadows that twisted like figures in a dream. I sipped my drink, the cold aluminum biting my fingers, trying to shake the unease that clung to me like damp cloth. The woods had always been kind, but tonight they felt like a stranger, their eyes hidden in the dark. We talked about old trips, our voices low, as if afraid to disturb the stillness. Then it came, a scream, raw and jagged, tearing through the forest like a blade. We froze, our breaths visible in the cold, our eyes locked on the fire. The sound was human, but wrong. A cry of pain or terror that didn't belong in this empty place. It came from deep in the woods, distant but clear, echoing off the trees before fading into silence. Justin's face paled, his beer forgotten in his hand. "What was that?" he whispered, his voice tight. I shook my head, my heart pounding, my mind scrambling for answers. A cougar, maybe, or a fox. Animals made strange sounds, didn't they? But the scream felt too raw, too desperate, like a voice begging for help. "Listen," my mind urged, a command I couldn't ignore. We waited, the fire's glow shrinking as the night deepened, but the forest stayed silent, its secrets buried in the snow. An hour passed, the cold seeping into our bones, the fire reduced to embers. The scream lingered in my mind, a ghost that wouldn't fade, its echo a question I couldn't answer. Justin suggested it was an animal, his voice firm, as if convincing himself. I wasn't so sure, but we didn't know what to do. Call for help with no signal or venture into the dark. The forest was a maze, its trails hidden under snow, its shadows a trap for the unwary. We added wood to the fire, its flames flaring, briefly, and cooked a quick meal, the smell of charred meat mixing with the pine-scented air. Then it came again, another scream, closer now, maybe 200 feet away, its pitch higher, more desperate. My blood ran cold, the sound of violation, a crack in the world we built. "Move," my mind commanded, and we obeyed. Justin grabbed, his knife, its blade glinting in the firelight, and I pulled on my jacket, the cold fabric stiff against my skin. We couldn't stay, couldn't ignore it. Not when it was so close, so real. We stepped into the woods, our boots sinking into the snow, the trees closing around us like a cage. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of frost and decay, the silence a weight that pressed down on us. We moved slowly, our flashlights cutting through the dark, their beams trembling with our hands. Every step felt like a trespass, the forest watching, judging, its shadows shifting just out of sight. The scream had come from the north, a direction we knew led to denser woods, a place where trails vanished under snowdrifts. We'd gone maybe 150 feet when it happened again, a scream so close it felt like it was inside us, its echo bouncing off the trees. My heart stopped, my breath a cloud in the cold as I scanned the dark, seeing nothing but endless pines. Justin paused, his knife tight in his grip, his eyes wide with fear. We were close, too close, and I felt it. The forest wasn't empty. We stood still, the silence roaring in our ears, waiting for a sign, a sound, anything. Then Justin moved, his steps cautious, his flashlight sweeping the snow. I followed, my pulse a drumbeat, my senses sharp with dread. He stopped, his body rigid, and I stepped beside him, my breath catching as I saw it. A deer, its body crumpled in the snow, its throat torn open, blood steaming in the cold. My stomach churned, the sight of violation, the blood too fresh, too bright against the white. The deer hadn't been dead long, its eyes still glassy, its body warm enough to melt the snow beneath it. This wasn't nature's work. This was something else, something deliberate. Justin's hand touched my shoulder, his grip tight, and I followed his gaze. There, across the clearing, stood a figure. A person, tall and thin, wearing only a tattered shirt and pants, no jacket, no boots, their skin pale against the dark. They were still, their eyes fixed on us, unblinking like a predator studying its prey. The air froze, the forest holding its breath, as I realized they weren't shivering, weren't moving, just watching, observing, as if we were part of their plan. Run, my mind screamed, a command that broke the spell. Justin's grip tightened and we backed away, our flashlights trembling, our steps careful but urgent. The figure didn't move, didn't follow, but their gaze was a weight, a chain that pulled at us. We turned, hurrying back to camp, the snow crunching under our boots, the trees blurring past. The forest was alive now, its shadows twisting, its silence a lie that hid teeth. We didn't speak, didn't need to. The fear was shared, a pulse between us. We packed in a frenzy, tearing down tents, stuffing gear into bags, our breaths ragged in the cold. The fire was dead, its ashes scattered, the clearing a stage we no longer belonged on. We fled, our car a lifeline, the engine roaring as we left the forest behind, its secrets untouched. I couldn't shake the image of that figure, their eyes burning through the dark, their presence a riddle I couldn't solve. The scream, the deer, the watcher, they were pieces of a puzzle, a nightmare that blurred the line between dream and reality. What were they doing out there, in the cold, with no coat, no fear? The question was an anchor, a weight that followed me home. The forest wasn't ours anymore. It was theirs, a place where screams lived. We found a new camping spot, safer, tamer, but the memory lingered, a ghost in every quiet moment. I still hear that scream, see those eyes, and wonder if they're still out there waiting for someone else to wander too close. The snow fell softly, dusting the empty road in a quiet that felt too heavy, too wrong, as if the night was hiding something just beyond my headlights. It was the night before Christmas Eve, and I was behind the wheel chasing extra tips as a DoorDash driver in a small town where the holiday spirit usually meant generous customers. My phone pinged with a new order around 11 p.m., a simple delivery, a bag of fast food to a house far from the usual neighborhoods. The address was out past the edge of town, where streetlights gave way to darkness, and the roads narrowed into thin ribbons of asphalt. Why so far, I wondered, but with orders slowing down, I accepted. the promise of a good tip outweighing the inconvenience. The drive was peaceful at first, the radio humming carols under the soft patter of snow on my windshield. The road twisted through fields, then into a forest of skeletal pines, their branches bowing under the weight of frost. My GPS guided me to a turn I almost missed, a dirt path, barely wide enough for my car, flanked by trees that seemed to lean inward, their shadows swallowing the light. This isn't a neighborhood. My stomach tightened as the path ended at a small cabin, its weathered wood glowing faintly under a single porch light. It looked more like a hunting lodge than a home, too small to hold more than a couple of rooms, isolated in a way that made my skin prickle. Who lives out here? I parked, the engine's hum fading into silence, and grabbed the bag of food, its warmth a small comfort against the biting cold. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, sharp and heavy, as I stepped onto the porch. Something's off. The thought hit me before I could name it. My hand pausing midair as I reached for the door, from inside came a sound. Laughter, voices overlapping in a cheerful clamor like a holiday party in full swing. How are so many people in there? The cabin was tiny, its windows dark, except for a faint glow from a back room. The voices were loud, too loud, their rhythm unnatural like a recording played on a loop. Doesn't sound right. I knocked, my knuckles stinging against the wood, and the voices continued unbroken as if no one had heard. They're expecting me. I knocked again, harder, my breath clouding in the cold. The door creaked open, revealing a man in his 40s, his face gaunt under a mop of graying hair, his eyes glinting with a strange intensity. He smiled, but it was wrong. Too wide, too forced, like a mask he wasn't used to wearing. "You're here," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. "He's been waiting." My pulse quickened, my grip tightening on the bag. The voices surged. Behind him, a cacophony of laughter and chatter, but the cabin was still, the hallway dark and empty. "Where are they?" "Got your order," I said, my voice shaky, holding out the bag. He didn't take it, his eyes locked on mine, his smile unwavering. "Why don't you bring it inside?" he said, stepping back, gesturing to the hallway. "Don't go in." The command echoed in my mind, sharp and urgent, but I hesitated, caught by his gaze. "They'll be happy to see you," he added, his tone coaxing, almost pleading. "They?" The voices grew louder, a chaotic blend of men and women, young and old. But the cabin remained motionless, its shadows untouched by movement. "It's not real." The realization hit like a cold wave, my mind flashing to a story my coworker had told. Me, a delivery to a remote house where the customer insisted he come inside, only for the place to be empty. The order a lure for something darker. Is this a trap? I opened my mouth to refuse, my words stumbling, but he cut me off. "They just want to thank you for working during the holidays," he said, his smile tightening, his eyes boring into mine. He's lying. The voices swelled, a crescendo of false joy, then silence. The sound stopped, abrupt and final, like a tape cut mid-play. The cabin was deathly quiet, the air thick with a tension that made my skin crawl. The man's smile faltered, his head turning slightly, as if he hadn't expected the sudden hush. He didn't mean for that to happen. My heart pounded, my body screaming to run, but I was frozen, caught in the moment's surreal horror. "Get out." The bag slipped from my hand, landing on the porch with a soft thud, and I bolted, my sneakers slipping on the icy path. I didn't look back, didn't dare, as I scrambled into my car, fumbling with the keys. The engine roared to life, my headlights cutting through the snow as I sped down the path, the cabin shrinking in my rearview mirror. "He's watching you," The thought looped in my mind, relentless, as I pictured him standing on the porch, his smile returning, his eyes following me into the dark. I drove straight home, my hands trembling on the wheel, and canceled all deliveries for the night. The rest of the holiday passed in a blur, my apartment a refuge I didn't leave. Years later, I still hear those voices, feel the weight of his gaze. What was in that cabin? The question haunts me, a shadow that lingers in every quiet moment. Was it a prank, a lonely man playing a cruel joke? Or something worse, something that wanted me inside for reasons I'll never know? I left the bag behind, but part of me stayed on that porch, trapped in the silence that followed the laughter. The night after Christmas was a void, its silence a weight that pressed against the store's glass walls, hiding something sinister in its folds. I worked the overnight shift at a small family-owned grocery store, a place of creaking floors and flickering lights, nestled in a town that slept early. Step into that quiet, feel its calm, but sense the shadow stirring. The schedule baffled me. Why was I here, alone, when the store had been closed for Christmas, its aisles barren from a slow day? I was a stocker, tasked with filling shelves, but there was little to do. The stockroom nearly as empty as the parking lot outside. Move through the aisles, touch the shelves, but know you're not alone. The first hour dragged, my footsteps echoing as I restocked what I could. Cans of soup, boxes of cereal, their labels blurring under the fluorescent hum. Feel the rhythm, lose yourself, but stay alert. With nothing left to shelve, I wandered, the store a maze of shadows and stillness, the air thick with the scent of cardboard and faint bleach. As I passed the front, near the wide windows facing the street, a movement caught my eye. A figure, too close to the building for this hour, his silhouette sharp against the sodium glow of a street lamp. Look outside, see him, feel the chill. He paced, his steps slow, deliberate, his head turning as if searching for something, or someone. My breath hitched, my body tensing, but before I could react, his eyes met mine, locking on through the glass, unblinking, unyielding. Feel his gaze, see the void, know it's not chance. He didn't wave, didn't speak, just stared, his face obscured by shadow, his presence a violation of the night's peace. Stand still. Don't move. But your heart races. My skin crawled, a primal urge screaming to hide, but I forced myself to stay, to meet his stare, to show I wasn't afraid. Seconds stretched, each one heavier, until I turned, breaking the spell, my steps quick as I retreated to the aisles. Walk away. Pretend it's nothing, but feel the lie. I told myself he was just a drifter, a late-night wanderer, but the memory of his eyes, cold, empty, hungry, clung to me, a stain I couldn't shake. I busied myself, straightening shelves, my hands trembling. The store's quiet, now a threat, not a comfort. You're safe here, aren't you? I waited, counting minutes, before daring to return to the front. Look again, see the empty street, breathe easy. The window was clear, the figure gone, the parking lot a sea of asphalt under the streetlights. I exhaled, relief flooding me, though a knot remained in my chest. He's gone. But is he? I resumed my wander, weaving through the aisles, adjusting. Cans my mind replaying that stare, questioning my fear. Was I overreacting? No one acted like that, not without reason. Doubt yourself, but trust your fear. The store felt different now, its familiar corners alien, its shadows deeper, as if they held secrets I wasn't meant to know. 10 minutes later, as I rounded the end of an aisle, my world shifted. Stop. See the chaos. Feel the dread. Boxes littered. The floor, Cereal, pasta, heavy packs of rice, scattered like debris from a storm. These weren't light items, not things that could tip over alone. They'd been pushed, knocked down, deliberately. Touch the boxes, feel their weight. No, someone's here. My heart pounded, my eyes darting to the shadows, the aisle stretching into darkness. Then from the end of the aisle, a sound. A soft, deep laugh, low and eerie, like a man mocking me from the gloom. Hear it. Feel it crawl up your spine. No, it's not human. It wasn't natural. Not a chuckle, but a giggle. Childlike, yet twisted, coming from a grown man hiding just out of sight. Freeze, listen, know he's close. My mind screamed to confront him, to demand who he was, but the memory of his silhouette, broad, looming, possibly armed, stopped me. Don't move, don't challenge, think of the danger. I pictured a weapon hidden in his jacket, a blade or, worse, glinting in the dark. My breath shallow, my legs leaden, I backed away. The laugh echoing in my ears, a taunt that followed me. Run now, save yourself, don't look back. I bolted for the front, my sneakers squeaking on the linoleum, the store a blur of shelves and shadows. I burst through the doors, the cold night air hitting me like a slap, and dove into my car, locking it, my hands shaking as I dialed 911. Call for help. Stay safe, but feel the fear. The police arrived in 10 minutes, their lights slicing through the dark, their voices sharp as they searched the store. Wait, watch, hope they find him. He was gone, vanished like a ghost, leaving no trace but the scattered boxes and my racing heart. Later, we reviewed the security tapes, each frame a revelation, each second a nightmare. See the truth, feel the horror, know you were right. He'd slipped in through a side door, his movements fluid, practiced, as if he knew the store's weaknesses. He hid behind the aisle, his laugh captured in grainy black and white, a switchblade in his hand, its edge catching the light as he watched me. See the blade, feel its threat, know you escaped. The cops speculated he wasn't sober, his actions erratic, but I knew better. Drunk or not, his intent was clear, his laugh a promise of harm. Believe their words, but trust your truth. I could have died that night, a single wrong move turning the store into my grave. Imagine it. Feel the cold. Know how close it was. The tapes showed his face, blurred but unmistakable, his eyes the same as through the window, empty, predatory, fixed on me. You see him still, don't you? I quit the job soon after, the store's aisles now a maze of fear. Its quiet a lie I couldn't trust. Leave it behind but carry the shadow. That night haunts me, a memory etched in fluorescent light and cold glass. Every shadow you see, every quiet place holds his laugh. I still check doors, still flinch at sudden sounds, still see his silhouette in every dark window. What's out there? Watching, waiting. The store was my refuge, a place of routine, but it became a stage for something else. Something that stared, and laughed and held a blade. You're safe now, but are you? I wonder if he's still out there, his knife ready, his laugh waiting, for someone else to wander too close. The city streets shimmered with a sickly glow, their wet asphalt reflecting the neon pulse of New Year's Eve, as if the night itself was alive and hunting. I stumbled out of a house party just past 3 a.m., my head a fog of cheap champagne and pounding music, my body heavy with the weight of too many toasts. The air was sharp, slicing through my jacket, carrying the faint echo of laughter from a world I'd left behind. I was alone now, standing on the curb of a quiet road, the host's sprawling mansion looming behind me, its windows flickering with the last gasps of celebration. My phone glowed in my hand, the Uber app promising a ride home, but the darkness felt closer, its edges curling around me like a predator's breath. I wasn't plastered, but I was far from sober. My thoughts sluggish, my vision blurring at the edges. The party had been a blur. Friends shouting over music, glasses clinking, the countdown to midnight a roar that had left me dizzy. I'd stayed too long, pushed past my limit, and now the night was punishing me. My friend Trav, who'd driven me here, was passed out upstairs, sprawled across a guest bed, his snores louder than the bass that still echoed in my skull. No one else was sober enough to drive, and I wasn't about to try. I ordered an Uber, the app estimating 10 minutes, and sank onto the curb. My jacket pulled tight against the cold. The street was empty, the houses dark, their lawns silent under a sky that seemed to swallow the stars. I waited, my breath fogging in the air, my head throbbing with each passing second. 10 minutes felt like hours, the cold seeping into my bones, the silence a weight I couldn't shake. My phone stayed dark, no updates from the app, and I wondered if I'd mistyped the address in my haze. Then headlights cut through the dark, a car slowing as it approached, its engine a low growl that set my nerves on edge. "Uber?" the driver called, his voice gruff but familiar, the kind you expect from a late-night ride. I nodded, my body moving before my mind could catch up, and climbed into the back seat. The door closed with a dull thud, sealing me in, and I felt it, a shift, like the night had just tightened its grip. The car smelled of stale coffee and cigarette smoke, the dashboard littered with receipts and a half-empty energy drink. I settled in, my head leaning back, my eyes half closed, trying to ignore the prickle on my neck, the whisper that something was wrong. The driver was older, maybe 50, his short dark hair streaked with gray, his beard thick and unkempt. His eyes met mine in the rearview mirror, and I froze, caught in their gaze, a cold, unblinking stare that felt like it saw too much. "Big party tonight?" he asked, his voice casual, but there was an edge to it, a sharpness that didn't match the words. "Yeah, I guess," I mumbled, my tongue heavy, my mind too foggy to engage. I wanted silence, wanted home, but his eyes kept finding mine, their weight a pressure I couldn't escape. I closed my eyes, hoping to shut him out, the car's motion lulling me into a fragile calm. The road hummed beneath us, the city a blur of lights and shadows, but I felt it. The wrongness, growing, like a shadow stretching across my thoughts. Then my phone lit up, its screen a beacon in the dark, and my heart stopped. A notification from the Uber app, cold and clear. "Your driver has arrived at the pickup location." Another message followed, the driver's name. Someone else, not this man, asking where I was. My blood ran cold, the world tilting as I realized I was in the wrong car with the wrong person. I glanced at the driver, his eyes already on me in the mirror, his gaze steady, knowing. He'd seen the screen, seen my face, and I saw it. A flicker of something dark, a predator's calm before the strike. My breath caught, my hands trembling as I slipped the phone into my pocket, my mind racing. "Stay calm," I told myself, a command that felt hollow, my heart a drumbeat in my chest. I leaned back, eyes closed, pretending I hadn't noticed, but inside I was screaming, every nerve alight with fear. The car moved on, its path unfamiliar, the city's landmarks wrong, the streets narrower, darker. I peeked out the window, my heart sinking as I saw no signs for my neighborhood, no familiar lights. He was taking me somewhere else, somewhere I didn't belong. My mind replayed the night, the party, the curb, the car pulling up too fast, too eager. How had I missed it? The app's map, the driver's name, the license plate. I checked none of it. Too drunk, too tired. The driver's silence was a weight now, his presence a threat that filled the car. I gripped my phone, my thumb hovering over the emergency call button, but I hesitated, afraid to provoke him, afraid of what he'd do if he knew I knew. The car slowed, the engine's hum softening, and I saw it. A red light ahead, glowing like a lifeline. My heart raced, my body tense, every muscle coiled for action. "Get out!" my mind screamed, a command I couldn't ignore. The car stopped, the light casting a bloody glow across the dashboard, the driver's eyes still fixed on the road. Now, I thought, and I moved, my hand fumbling for the door handle, my breath shallow. I pushed it open, the cold air rushing in, and lunged out, my feet hitting the pavement as the car lurched forward. I fell, my knees scraping the asphalt, pain flaring. Fright, but I scrambled up, running, my lungs burning, the car's taillights fading into the dark. He didn't follow, didn't stop, just drove on, his silhouette a ghost in the night. I stood there, trembling, the city's silence roaring in my ears, the red light still glowing, a witness to my escape. My phone buzzed. The real Uber driver, canceling, unaware of the nightmare I just fled. I walked, then ran, to a gas station a block away, its fluorescent lights a sanctuary. My breath ragged, as I called a friend to pick me up. The night felt unreal. A dream where danger wore a familiar face, where a ride home became a trap. I kept seeing his eyes, cold and unblinking, a promise of something I'd never know. The signs were there, the wrong direction, the lack of an app update, the car's cluttered interior, but I'd been too out of it, too trusting. What did he want? The question was an anchor, a weight that followed me home into my dreams. I couldn't sleep. The memory of that car, a shadow that clung to me. Its interior, a stage where nightmares played out. I saw his face in every stranger, felt his gaze in every dark window. The city wasn't safe anymore. It was a place where predators drove, where a single mistake could end you. I stopped using Uber, checked every ride twice, but the fear stayed, a ghost in every quiet moment. I still wonder who he was, what he planned, and how many others he'd picked up, their nights ending differently. The red light saved me, but the darkness of that night, the truth of how close I'd come, is a weight I'll never shake.